Hi, everybody. Thanks for the link, Andrew.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz, and I am the Communications Manager for the No Theater of Cincinnati. Welcome to our talkback for the Radio No Show, The Conversation. I'm going to begin by introducing our guests for tonight's conversation. You've heard some of their voices, you've seen their names, and now you have faces to go with those names. If you all could wave at our lovely audience while I introduce you, just so they know who we're talking about. So with us tonight, we've got John Brommels, the playwright of The Conversation. Hi, John. We also have Kate Coley, our director. We've got Tess Helbert, who plays Patricia, Andrew Ian Adams, who plays Jack, and Patrick Earl Phillips, who plays the Visitor. You're also lovely. Thank you for being with us. So The Conversation, its sort of genre, it takes it into the realm of speculative fiction. John, can you set the scene for us a bit and tell us about the world that the play takes place in?
Sure. So this is actually modeled after some of the plays that were being written in Germany and Switzerland and other Western Central European countries in sort of during the Cold War era. So they were writing about these kinds of dystopian universes when the Iron Curtain was still up, and when lots of things were going on that were very shady from very repressive and dictatorial states. So I decided that a contemporary Cincinnati audience probably isn't going to engage very much with the story of a Swiss city in Central Europe in the 1960s. So I decided to sort of update it and put it in a possible future United States. And basically what I did was I thought to myself, all right, what are some things that are happening now that an out of control totalitarian state could use and change to make things even more to their advantage. And so I thought, well, at the time I wrote it, actually, there was a lot of headlines about newspapers failing left and right, and all these local papers going out of business. So I said, okay, well, what if a state decided that they could sort of unify the newspapers and basically take control of the press by claiming that they were rescuing the newspapers and giving them the financial support that they needed, which, sounds very innocuous, but of course then is taking us a step down this road. Another thing is I thought, well, if it was a totalitarian state and we have Canada to the north, which isn't one, how would that affect things? And that's why you'll note that they talk about the St. Lawrence Seaway being mined and that there's things on the opposite shore, even though Canada currently controls both sides of the St. Lawrence Seaway. The US border is much further south. So that was like a little throwaway hint to anyone who was paying attention of, well, clearly what's happened in this world is the United States has taken over all the way up to the St. Lawrence Seaway. So yeah, it was mostly a sense of, okay, here's the way things are now. If I were leading a totalitarian state, what could I twist to my advantage and sort of take down that road? And that was sort of where I spent my time changing the world.
It's fun that you threw in a little Easter egg for that huge swath of our audience who are geography nerds. John, you write a lot. I don't want to say a lot. You have written several sort of dystopian totalitarian plays that actually we presented at the No in one big evening recently. Do they take place in a coherent universe? Are they same universe stories, or do they just function on similar themes?
Well, I never actually set out to do that. Actually, as you'll probably remember, a lot of you, the first things that I wrote for the No were actually all comedies. But then I switched over and I decided I wanted to sort of do a re-up of Franz Kafka's The Trial, which turned into a play called The Interview, which again, here is this mid-century Swiss-German author. I don't know why I go back to that, but I guess if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Here's a mid-century Swiss-German author who is writing about this sort of dystopian world in which someone comes back for someone keeps getting told they're on trial, but they don't know what the charges are. Being called before various groups of people that they never know who they are, and it all happens at these random times in random places. And so I updated that again into a contemporary setting in which a young woman, played by Tess, keeps getting letters from an agency that says you need to come in for an interview. That ended up being so successful that I sort of went back to the well and took an old it was a German radio play originally by Friedrich Dürrenmatt called Nächtliches Gespräch, which means a nighttime conversation. And I sort of took that as inspiration and ran with it from there. And what's funny is, even though these are two different authors who were actually writing about 30, 40 years apart, a lot of German and Central Western European literature at that time period, from the early part of the century to the mid-century, it's all sort of the same. It's very depressing. A lot of people are dying. It's extremely bleak. And you have to remember that these authors had lived through either one or two world wars. They were witnessing a lot of changes in governments, and not necessarily for the better, whether that's the 30s or whether that's the 50s, all around them. And they are sort of gripped by this sense of despair and a lot of clearly yearning for change, but this feeling of being trapped and unable to break out of their current circumstances because of some mysterious forces that are beyond their control. And I guess I would ask the question, isn't it a little concerning that these plays or these stories that are about these topics resonate for us here and now? And this idea that bad things are happening and things are going the wrong direction, but we feel incredibly trapped and we feel like we can't do anything about it and that we're powerless. So I wonder if there's a part of that just in the human condition at all time periods, but I think that's the world we live in.
Well, I had no idea that this show was part of a whole literary history. That's really cool. Kate, so when you came in as director for this, what were the big ideas that jumped out at you, and what do you think that people are going to be thinking about or left with once they're finished listening to it?
Yeah, so basically everything John just said. I didn't know the literary stuff until a rehearsal or two in, but in terms of the thematic concerns, I think that the first time I read it, I thought, okay, this is sort of speculative fiction, but oh, isn't it so familiar, you know? And so that feeling of this is this is fictional, but it doesn't feel too far off, was really interesting to me. And what I really love about this piece is that we can talk about these deep thematic ideas, these ideas of loss of control, of censorship, of government control, these conspiracies. And, you know, as a side note, I think this play sort of something I've been thinking about lately is you don't have to look to intense right wing, alt right conspiracy theory ideas. You just have to look at what is actually happening to find organized systems of oppression and censorship. So we can talk about all that deep stuff, but it's also just a really funny play. And I think that the humor of it really leapt off the page the first time I read it. And I think some plays are written and you can hear how it's going to go, and you can hear how the characters are expressing themselves and their intentions, and their even some inflection things are just clear. And that's always exciting to me. As someone who likes to work with newer works, you know, I know that this piece has already been through several iterations, as John just talked about. And so to see, like, we're a little ways down the line, but now we're going radio, so how can we adapt it in that way? Just the idea of that was exciting. And so my hope is that the audience, after listening to it, has thought, and for anyone who hasn't listened to it yet, will think, you know, this is familiar, but it's funny. And I want them to think, you know, what can I be more conscious of? What am I pretending isn't happening? How can I support my local journalists, to be honest, you know? How can I engage with people who are on the ground as journalists, especially doing the work? So I hope people are just reflecting a lot, and then with that reflection, taking action to support people who are trying to take down those oppressive systems.
Yeah, absolutely. Andrew, can I bounce this over to you now? Because I know that you're a really big sci-fi fan.
What? Sci-fi fan? Why did I get that from?
Oh, you beautiful, beautiful human. So certainly, like, this is definitely a case of speculative fiction really reflecting the zeitgeist in which it is made. So I was wondering if you could, if you had any additional thoughts on how the conversation speaks to us in 2020, and do you feel that it's cautionary or hopeful, or maybe both?
Well, I feel like it's not just speaking, it's screaming at us in 2020. um, yeah, with all the talking points of like conspiracy theories and just how easy they are to digest and to expand and explode on all facets, whatever side of whatever fence you're on. It's just like the maturity period for these seeds to grow, it's incredibly disturbingly incredible this day and age. It's weird that we as humans are sort of in this golden age of having a wealth of knowledge at our fingertips at any point in time, and we're at this point where we can connect and learn about each other in different cultures and different religions, and just have access to be a human race, yet we can't step forward together, and things cling to uh, darker uh, darker paths and old habits. So this the conversation, I think it's weird that it was written before 2020, but it is so on the nose of what is happening in 2020. And it's beyond like that sort of the Simpsons prediction type level of thing. Yeah, I think it is a hopeful story. There's the hope with certain characters in the play that, for those who obviously I'm trying not to spoil anything, there is the hope of, even though somebody is willing to be the bad guy, from an exterior position, people view them as a bad guy, that they are actually sacrificing their own image in order to do good, as much good as they can, being within a system and allowing themselves to be a part of that system in order to do things for the betterment of humanity that people that are the good guys on the outside can't achieve.
Oh, I think that's a very interesting answer. Let's actually go to our first clip of the evening. We're going to listen to a few clips throughout our conversation. So this is right at the beginning where Jack and Patricia are talking, and we're starting to wonder if maybe Jack is paranoid or maybe if he's onto something. Let's play that clip.
Jack, everything okay?
Oh, fine. It's nothing.
Jack? What, is somebody out there?
Oh, it's just there's this car.
It's a street, Jack. Of course there's a car.
No, I mean, see? That black car with tinted windows. It looks like an official car, and it's been sitting there all day.
Oh, yes. I think I've heard about this.
Really? What have you heard?
It's this new thing called parking. Yeah, it's very sinister. It's where people stop their cars and get out of them and go have lives. You should try it sometime.
Very funny.
Seriously, Jack, it's a car. Maybe it's an official car, so what? What's the big deal?
Tess, I have a question for you. You are, I believe you're the actor who has been with the show the longest, right? Over its various incarnations. Can you recap for us all of the places that this story has been told?
Yeah, so John, maybe help me out because I feel like everything bleeds together now. Time is a sieve. I was lucky enough to participate in this first iteration of the conversation when it was in serials, but it wasn't like an elimination round. We did get to go through the whole thing, if I recall. Is that right, John?
Actually, I think it was interview that was non-elimination, and then this went back in
Well, we made it through,
Yeah.
obviously. So kudos to John for writing
Kudos to
a
you.
great piece that kept people on the edge of their seats. But we did start this out in serials, and that was with a couple other folks who were not on this recording, but Ben Dudley. It was my first time ever meeting him, which was delightful. And Rory Sheridan, who's also participated in the interview with me and then the binge series with John for these sort of three similar plays. And then, so yeah, serials first. Then we did the binge watch with Andrew Ian came and joined us. And we had Michael Burnham in the first one, and then we had Mike Sherman in the second iteration. And now we have Patrick joining us in Rory, in place of Rory. And it's been really fun to come back to the people. Well, first of all, like, I gotta be grateful to John for thinking of me and then also asking me to continuously come back because it means I don't suck. It's been really cool to get to come back to a script that has aged with the times, up to the times, kind of as Andrew just mentioned, has become this perfect representation piece of 2020 for American politics. And I really loved getting to do this for radio, some extra little nuances, having time to simmer with these objectives and the character, and then having a new director, Rebecca Brommels, started out with us, but then we got Kate Coley, which was really just delightful to have like new puzzle pieces come in and out and just be their own version of the perfect fit. And I really had a great time, like, with the process of script analysis. Serials kind of exists in like a pressure cooker. And even though we only had a week of audio rehearsals for this recording, I really felt like we had plenty of time to, and really were well guided by Kate on, you know, these subtle nuances that happen for radio versus some of the physical gags that we didn't have the luxury of having, that were very present for the live productions. So that was a very long-winded way of me saying I very much enjoyed myself for the past couple years with this. So
No, that's so wonderful. It was such a good, you addressed some of the things I was going to hit you with as follow-up questions. So you were just so on it. You were on the track I wanted you to be. Patrick, so Tess mentioned that you were one of the cast members who's brand new to the show in its Radio No adaptation. Had you seen the show before? Were you aware of it? And what's it like joining an existing cast as the new kid?
I was unfamiliar with the piece before I was asked to take over this role. But I did know that it was a part of Serials. So I like Tess sort of mentioned, I understood that I was part of their pressure cooker, which just makes me applaud. I love Serials so much for that it just is kind of like, well, we got to create, don't think about it, just go. And it created this piece that has given a lot of people work. So thank you. Even if it's a pandemic, we can work. So thank you for that. And also it is cool to see these shows that sort of blossom from that pressure cooker and then become these deep pieces that you can mine. And now it is such a relatable piece as time has gone by. As a new person to this piece, both Elliot Young, who he unfortunately is not here with us tonight, but he was the other newbie along with me. We both said at the end of the first read that Andrew, Ian, and Tess gave us a great feel for the tone and the pace that this piece needed. So it was fortunate that their scene is first, and then me and Elliot come in later in the play. So our first read felt like it really cooked. It felt really good. And it was a very welcoming and warm, I want to say Zoom room to come into. So really grateful for that. John and Kate really gave us free range to mine anything we wanted to and take it where we felt it was natural for our group. And that's kind of, I do have some previous experience of coming into roles that other people have had before. It's sort of just known by the whole cast and crew that it's a different person. They're going to have a different take naturally. But it is interesting to know that Rory Sheridan had my part before. And it was funny, when I first read it, I heard his voice, and not seeing the show, I was like, I wonder if Rory did, because Rory has such a great, unique comic timing and voice. And I could sort of tell that, I don't mean to, I want to assume that maybe John had him in mind when he wrote the piece. I'm seeing some head nods, it was, sometimes as a new actor who might have an inkling of who played it before, you want to try to actively avoid choices that person might make. But that's more of just you get that out of the way. You might do something similar to the way they do because you're reading the same lines and you're doing the same action. It's all out of respect for this piece. What a joy it was to do this. I'd never done radio play before. and this has really lit a fire to keep exploring it. So thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, I think for those of us who know Rory Sheridan, he haunts all of our subconsciouses to a very small degree. Also, Tess and Patrick have both spoken to serials, and for the people who are watching who maybe don't know what serials is, it is a thing that The Know does. It is competitive episodic theater. So every week we let groups present 15 minutes of a show, and the audience votes as to whether they can continue their story the next episode or not. It's very fast paced and really makes people think on their feet as they are developing stories and trying to pull in those votes. So John, when you write, do you see yourself writing for a particular audience, a particular demographic, or is it more about just writing what makes you happy? Are you writing for your own tastes?
I mean, I don't, when I sit down to write, I don't really think about who am I writing this for. I just sort of start writing, and then the writing takes over, and eventually you find that you had intended to write one thing and ended up writing something completely different. Actually that happened with the first couple of serials that I wrote that were, I sat down to write comedies, and then the first one ended up with this very strong, ended up being a very strong critique of the campout system of getting into the Cincinnati public schools, which was still going on at the time. People had to camp out for weeks, and so the first serial that I wrote was called So Intense, TENTS, and it was about 4 people who have to sit out there for 4 weeks or however long it is in a little batch of tents, holding their places in line so their kids can get into this school, and ended up actually this was probably the highlight of a playwright's social activism. The then superintendent of Cincinnati Public Schools, he actually, in an op-ed in the Cincinnati Enquirer, explaining why the school board had abolished, or I guess the time it was just temporarily suspended, that practice. He referred to an enterprising citizen even wrote a play about this situation. So that's me, enterprising citizen galore. I honestly think, I sort of write the stories that I think are interesting and that speak to me, in the hopes that if they speak to me, they'll probably speak to other people as well. I noticed that as Andrew was talking about science fiction, it suddenly occurred to me, well, what is Star Wars but a story about a totalitarian regime that's taken over and people feel trapped and like they have no other choice but to do these various things. So I think there's sort of a universality, to a lot of different stories. One rule I do try to practice in my plays, though, which I don't know that I've ever actually articulated to anybody else, I try not to, I have a maximum of 1 F-bomb per play rule, because I feel like if you lean too hard on the swears, I feel like that takes away from the play, and it's gonna actually alienate some audience members if you use too much bad language. I'm actually trying to remember. I don't know if there's any bad language in this play. Isn't this terrible that the playwright doesn't know? Yeah, I think I managed to avoid it. Anyway, but yeah, I'm always, I have a strict 1 F-bomb max policy, and I try not to do swears otherwise, to keep it as accessible as possible.
I love that. John, the non-sweary enterprising citizen, is like on the list of ways I describe you when I'm talking about you behind your back. That's like 4th, I think, on the list. I'm kidding. I don't talk about you behind your back, I promise. So if you were just sort of writing and letting the story come, who do you think is an audience group who will love this play? I don't want to say demographic because it's less age and gender, but what's a group of people who you think will love the conversation?
Sure. Well, being that it's sort of a mix of comedy and suspense, I think that anyone who likes that sort of genre, my wife sometimes says if you like Black Mirror, if you like if you like the old Twilight Zone episodes, if you like different anything Alfred Hitchcock Presents kind of stuff, if you like any of that genre of the suspense, the intrigue, you will enjoy this play. I also think that because it speaks to where we are a little bit right now as a country, I think if you live in the United States of America, I think you will enjoy this play a lot, and probably should see it.
Or hear it, as the case may be.
What's that?
I said, or hear it, as the case may be.
Or hear it, excuse me. Yes, you should hear it. Not to get all theater history-y on you, there was a huge debate in theater in like the 1800s about whether you should say, I went to see a play or I went to hear a play. Oh yeah. It was like Coke versus Pepsi. It was like hardcore between what verb you use. This is in the UK. So I guess now that we've put this on radio, we have definitively answered that question.
Right. I like to think that Radio No exists primarily to settle linguistic debates from England in the 19th century. That's my strong feeling.
I've provided goodies for geography nerds, history nerds, I mean, so I guess what I'll say is if you're a nerd, you will love this play.
Calling all nerds. Let's listen to another clip from the play. So this is right when the visitor, played by Patrick, makes his very first appearance for his visit.
I've been expecting you.
Jesus. Well, this is awkward.
Kinda. Yeah.
You, often sit around in the dark at 1 a.m?
Do you often climb up drain pipes and break windows at 1 a.m?
No, actually. Not unless I have no other choice. I prefer a nice back hallway, or at the very least a fire escape. This place is really a death trap. What if there was a fire?
Well, there used to be a fire escape until they repealed all the building code regulations, and then it rusted over and fell off the building.
Huh. I hope nobody got hurt.
Seriously?
What?
Oh, come on. We both know why you're here.
Candygram.
And you hope nobody got hurt.
Hey, just because I do this for a living doesn't mean I'm a bad person.
That is exactly what it means.
I love that. I love that bit so much. Kate, we've talked a little bit about adapting this existing story for radio. Can you talk about what it's like to direct a radio play and how it is both similar and different from what we know about directing for the stage?
Absolutely. So this is my first radio directing experience. Is that true? Yes, that's true. I've done a couple of like Zoom reading type things, but this is my first pure audio situation. And so something that's different. This is also my first time directing in a recorded medium. I usually direct live, not recorded. And so with live theater, you have an understanding of fluctuation and emotional, the sort of tuner of a certain emotion might be in a slightly different place every night. The intentions are the same, but acting is fluid and humans are humans, and if we wanted the same play every night, we would just hire robots, but we don't, we hire people. So working in a recorded medium too, there's this understanding and for me, a little bit of pressure of, okay, like if this is the take we're using, this is what it's going to be till the end of time, till the next adaptation rather. So that is very interesting, thinking in that there is a more fixed end goal was a different way of thinking for me. And then with that, you know, we did have lots of time to get into nice deep script analysis, just as I would with something where we get to see people's faces. And what differed is that, oh my gosh, the thought just flew out of my head. Hang on, it's coming back. Yes, what differs is that it's, for me, I direct very much in like a question answer sort of way. So I'll ask a question, and then get the actor input and then put in my input, and then we find sort of a common solution, right? And so for this, it was that approach, but with this, it felt more like orchestrating, because we only have the voice. We don't have the voice and the face. For me, it felt like more of a musical understanding of a script. And I have a musical background, and so that's sort of how I thought about it. And not giving line readings, so not saying this is how you're going to say this line, but getting the actor to a place is one skill. And then saying, okay, now do that every time because it's going to be recorded is another skill. And so it was really fun to try to explore, how do you not give someone a line reading, but understand that, okay, if I'm not seeing your face, I don't get this line yet. And so working in rehearsals, trying not to look at people, to not rely on the face, which feels very antisocial, but was sort of necessary at certain points. It's very different, but it's super exciting, and I imagine it's more like working in any other recorded medium, just because you have to understand, like, this is the take that's going to happen, and so you have to be so specific. And digging into those specifics it's fun, and it's the juicy part, and it's what enables you to have a 45-minute play but spend a week just tearing into it and getting all the puzzle pieces out and organized and put back together.
I apologize. I muted myself because my dog was yapping. That's so fascinating, Andrew. Can I bounce it over to you? And what's it like? Yes. This is a weird way to bounce. This looks like I'm trying to hook you. But I'd really like to hear your take on taking a performance from stage to radio, because you gave such a beautiful performance at the binge watch, where we watch a whole serial back to back. But is it just as straightforward as standing in front of the mic and saying the lines just like before, or was there a process of finding new ways to do things?
It's definitely, I think Tess definitely touched on a lot of it, of being able to come back to piece and characters that you're familiar with, and sort of coming back with the knowledge of, like, all right, these are beats and drives and choices that really work, that felt really right in this the stage performance. So, but let's see, maybe I can have a little more fun or wiggle room, or let's see how this goes if I go in this direction with the radio. It was definitely I do commercial and have done some voiceover work and whatnot, but I'm a theater background trained, so I already had to learn how to go from theater to screen acting, and I think it's a bit of the same thing for going from stage to radio. It's sort of, you can't rely on the big and the physicality and the room filling sort of energy. It's sort of like you have to be very concise, and you have to carry the story and the emotions and what is going on in the room that you're in, and what are your emotions that you're feeling, only using your voice, and allowing giving enough color through your performance so that the audience can paint the rest of the picture with their imaginations.
Yeah, I always think it's so interesting working in audio, what you said about the energy of the room, when you don't have the audience to sort of feed off of, like when you're not getting a laugh, especially in a moment that's funny. like those things kind of like boost you along, you know, like you are the rock skipping along the water of the audience's energy. And it's hard when suddenly you don't have other humans responding to you. Speaking of responding, this is a show that hits a bunch of different notes. There's a lot of gravity, but there's also a lot of levity. Patrick, can you talk to us about both, maybe more what makes the show funny? Because we've talked a lot about the very serious political undertones of this show, but what makes it funny, and how do you walk the line of bringing levity to these moments without making light of them, maybe?
Sure. So I think with any great piece of commentary drama, it's held under a foundation of comedy. All of my favorite dramas are actually pretty funny. And because I think that we all use humor to deflect. We use humor in many different ways in order as sly tactics to get what we want, to catch our opponent off guard. And then it's entertaining. It's just, you don't want to sit and have an audience watch and be depressed. The Crucible is a great play. But you can even find, you can mine the Crucible for some funny moments. You got Giles Corey, for example. Anyway, so speaking of the comedy in this piece, I don't, for those that haven't watched it, I don't think I'm giving too much away that my character is named the Visitor. I am an unexpected guest that shows up to Jack's apartment, played by Andrew Ian. And I'm not quite who he expects. I'm not the kind of person who he expects to be, breaking into his house. And it kind of continues to snowball in this direction that Jack does not expect it to go at all, because my character is so against his preconceived notion of the kind of person that I should be. I am a form of government agent. Jack has this image of the government agent in his mind, and I'm more like not that at all. I just don't fit the bill. And I think what that does, what comedy in a piece like this does, it makes these issues palatable. It makes us find common ground to converse and understand these things in a palatable way. And it just helps us along the journey. And what it also sets up is a great surprise about my character in the end, and really sets up the good twists and turns that I put Jack through. So it was really fun. It was really fun to read. It definitely, my first read, it didn't go the way that I thought it would. And so I hope that as people listen, that they enjoy that ride too.
That's so wonderful. That takes us right into our next clip, our last clip of the evening, which is Jack has a pretty clear idea of what this agent is here to do to him, and he is desperately trying to talk his way out of what he thinks is the inevitable. So let's play that clip, please.
I want to have a conversation.
What have we been doing for the last 10 minutes? We've covered my leg, curfew, Greek antiquities, the severely deficient contents of your medicine cabinet.
I mean, I want to have a real conversation.
A real conversation? What do you want to really converse about?
You don't have to do this.
Oh my God. You're right.
I am.
I don't have to do this. I mean, all these years I've just been blindly following orders, doing what I'm told, and it just never occurred to me that I could just stop. But now you've opened my eyes to the possibilities, and now we're Gonna go on the lam in my vintage car and help people across the country and have hijinks and save each other's lives and get into a quasi-father-son relationship that's never really fully fleshed out. And it's all because you told me I don't have to do this. Thank you. Thank you for changing my life.
You don't need to be a dick about it.
Charming. Truly, truly lovely. Tess, I would like to bounce back to the beginning of the play. Patricia is, I'm so fascinated by this character who has her own little arc, and like it's a whole little drama full of revelations with a very short amount of stage time. So can you let us in on a little bit about who Patricia is, and do you think she's ultimately a hero or a villain in this landscape?
So Patricia is one of Jack's college friends, and they were close friends in college. And now she works for a PR firm. And you do find out that PR stands for propaganda. So Patricia has dropped in, not unexpectedly, but like 2 weeks notice, to hang out with Jack for the evening. And they're just reminiscing about their college days and talking about, I just love the way that the show starts with this sort of wild, hilarious roundabout retelling of a workplace incident. And then segueing into how Jack has been working on his own writing for other sort of sub publications that are for liberation from this totalitarian government. And Patricia notices Jack's paranoia, is concerned about his paranoia, tries to convince him that it might be a good idea to maybe take a break. Paranoia is ruling his life. And as like old friends do, even after periods of time where they're not in communication, I have a lot of personal relationships like this with my friends from school, is that you sort of pick up right where you left off. And it does sort of descend into this like sibling-esque. It was one of the notes that Kate gave that I just was like, oh yeah, she's so right. Like that is so right on. I didn't know everything I knew how to describe this like sibling-esque back and forth of like, nothing is sacred when it gets to the point where you're in a fight with someone and you're like, oh yeah, well, boom, here's like nail in the coffin, smoke bomb kind of thing. And so there is this really beautiful, like, whole life cycle of their friendship that happens in these first maybe 12 pages of the script. I think Patricia is coming from a place of truth and honesty, and the only way that she thinks that she can affect Jack is the tactics that she uses to try to convince him to take a break. And I do think that it does end up in this very sibling-esque way of getting harsher and harsher, pulling back, and then putting the empathy and sympathy back on top to sort of soothe and maybe coerce a little bit. I don't think that Patricia is a villain. I don't know that I think Patricia is a hero. I think Patricia is trying to save her friend. Maybe that's heroic, and maybe I need to expand my definition of that word. But I think she's just trying to do the right thing without revealing too much about herself or ruining her own self and her livelihood, her like chance of survival in the process.
Yeah, one of my absolute favorite things about the way this story kicks off is that it sounds like Jack is crazy and Patricia is the voice of reason, and then that sort of kind of gets subverted as layers get peeled back. I think it's so beautiful. Let's close with a round robin for the group without giving too much away. what's your favorite line of dialogue from the show? John, why don't we start with you because you wrote this bad boy. What's your favorite line?
Why don't you just ask me which of my children is my favorite, Liz?
We
I
all
mean,
know that it's the
honestly.
eldest.
I mean, oh man, it is really hard for me to pick just one. One of my favorites is that I really love all the sort of rejoinders, probably just because they make me feel clever for having come up with them. But one of my favorites comes fairly early on in the play, and it's "I'll move my car." And which I'm not going to give any more context for. If you haven't seen it, you'll have to watch it to figure out why that's one of my favorite lines. And then I'm going to sneak in one extra because I don't know, because I'm the playwright. Do it. That's the I'm actually really like the spark that lit. You don't know which spark is going to light the flame, so you have to throw out as many sparks as you can. And that one I really do like, just because it made me feel clever for being like, hey, I came up with that all by myself. It's all about my ego. It's really just the whole thing.
But it's a beautiful line, and I think it is. I don't want to like pour more oil onto the fire of your ego, but I think it's a very resonant line. Kate, do you have a favorite line?
I sure do, as I was assigned. I was like, I have to pick a good one. So I think my favorite line, at least for how I'm feeling right now, is one of the Visitor's line, which is, of course it's all going to fall apart. Every regime in all of history has fallen apart. Some went fast, like the Qin dynasty, and some went slow, like ancient Rome, but they all go eventually. And I just love a good acknowledgement that everything's temporary, and we might think that the U.S. is gonna hold on forever, but we're a baby of a nation. So I love that acknowledgement.
Andrew, what about you?
Oh, my favorite. It's been my favorite since the stage production or the binge watch. It is Tess's line of I can't remember it verbatim, but it's about something about wasting your time. You should have been making lemonade out of lemons instead of squirting it in your own eyeballs. It makes me so, every time. I was so glad that this was audio only and not capturing or showing our faces, because every time Tess does that line, I just get a grin on my face. I don't know why. It just warms my soul.
It's delightful. It's so delightful. Patrick, what about you?
So I had a lot of fun trying to do sounds of drinking. I got a very specific direction from Kate. At one point, we did a read, and she was like, "Yeah, that drink during that read was really good." I was like, "What did I do?" Because I don't know what I did. She was like, "It's like you got something stuck in your throat, and then you got it out." And I was like, "Okay, I'll do that." And the next time was just awful. So it was like, I'm not gonna do it. But anyway, so that's like in parentheses one of my what do it? No, I can't. It's my Horcrux. I can't. For all the nerds, my true favorite line, because I think it's just so thematic, is "This is me making the best of it." I think that's just very telling on its own. And I also feel like it's full of intrigue. So go to the No Theater website and listen to the show. So.
And Tess, what's yours?
I'll Move My Car is definitely one of my favorites, just for the payoff. So you'll have to listen to find out. But I think my second favorite, I'm cheating, I'm doing two also, is an exchange between Patricia and Jack, where it's like, just because it's a one-party state doesn't mean it's totalitarian. And he's like, that is literally what that means. Andrew Ian does it better, but I just love that. It's just such a great example of, the humor throughout, even though we're talking about these incredibly tense themes, still can break the tension with a little bit of comedy. So.
Yeah, well, thank Thank you all to our panel for joining us, and everyone at home who is tuning in and listening to us. If you haven't downloaded the conversation, it's available at notheater.com. And if you love Radio No, stay tuned for our next show, Haunted, the Great Lakes Ghost Project by Joseph Zettelmeyer, which will be haunting Radio No beginning next Wednesday. As ever, thank you to our pug sponsor, Joe Mock and the Real Pro team at Cutler Real Estate, and our season sponsors, the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, the Ohio Arts Council, the Carol Ann and Ralphie L. Jr. U.S. Bank Foundation, David C. Harriman, and the thousands of individuals and organizations who give annually to the Arts Wave Community Campaign. We couldn't do it without all of you. Thank you so much, and good night.